Something is rotten in the state of Denmark. Hamlet, Prince of Denmark, and his mother, Gertrude, Queen of Denmark, have been struggling to deal with an escalating conflict within their family. Although Hamlet has been acting strangely ever since Gertrude married Claudius, the brother of Hamlet's deceased father, the former king, things have become recently much worse. Hamlet is now talking about charging his stepfather with murder. Whenever Gertrude asks him about why he would say such a horrible thing, Hamlet will only say that the ghost of his father told him to avenge his murder.
Now, I'm not sure if either of you have been to a mediation before. No? Just so we're on the same page, I'll talk a little bit about the mediation process. It's a process that gives both parties a chance to resolve a dispute. My job is to be a neutral third party. I'm not involved in your dispute, but what I try to do is help you communicate with each other more effectively than you might have in the past. And I facilitate the discussion between the two of you. I'm here to help you see the issues more clearly and to help you get them resolved. What I want to emphasize about my job is I'm here just to assist you. I'm not here to solve it for you. I'm not like a judge, for example, where they might help you with the correctness of an expert report or make decisions, okay? What I'm here to do is to help control the process, and I might ask you questions and help clarify things, just help keep things on track. Now, the great thing about mediation is partly that it's informal, and partly that you can come up with any agreement that the two of you think is right, and it's a voluntary process. You're both here because you've agreed to be here, okay? Have you got any questions about that? No? All right, so we need to go over this agreement to mediate that I have here. And by signing this, each of you are agreeing that you're committing to use your best efforts, and it means that you're here in good faith and you have the authority to attempt to settle. Okay? You both have the authority?
Yes, I do.
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, now I want to remind you that each of you is entitled to consult with a lawyer at any time, okay? But I am not going to be giving you any legal advice, right? And this agreement states here that negotiations that we have here are not admissible in any further action, okay? So they're confidential between the two of you. And with respect to me and my role, I can't be compelled to testify about what I hear, all right? Is that clear? You understand all those points then? Any questions about that? Well, let's sign this then. I'll get you to do that first, Gertrude. And Hamlet. Thank you. Thank you. I'll just sign that. Now, in terms of the process that we'll be using here today, I should explain that what I usually do is get each of you to just briefly talk about what brought you here today, and then we'll have a more open-ended discussion, okay? And at some point in time, I may have just a private conversation with each of you. That's called a caucus, okay? So, or if either of you wants to make that decision and ask about having a caucus, that's fine too, okay? Gertrude, you're the one who initiated this mediation. Perhaps you should start.
Well, I don't really know where to start. I mean, this whole thing has been so horrible, really.
Well, why don't you start with when your husband died?
Okay, yes, Hamlet's father. As Hamlet knows, as everyone knows, I love the king dearly. I was devastated when he died. But Claudius, he was there for me. He was there for me the whole time. He seemed to be really concerned with what people were saying about the king's death. And I knew that it was really soon when he asked me to marry him, but it felt right. I was hoping that he and Hamlet would spend some time together when Hamlet came back to Elsinore, would start to get to know each other a bit better. But from the very beginning, Hamlet's been acting so strangely. First, he's been wearing black long after the time it was appropriate for grieving, and he's been so disrespectful of Claudius. I mean, I honestly thought that maybe it was just a stage he was passing through. After all, he's studying theater at the University of Wittenberg, and I really thought he was just being dramatic.
So when did he start acting this way?
Well, I suppose when I first became aware of it was when our dear friend Polonius came to report on Hamlet's behavior with his daughter Ophelia, Hamlet's girlfriend. Polonius told me that he was acting really very strangely with Ophelia. So Claudius and I talked, and we thought, well, maybe if we brought some of his old friends around to see him, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, that, perhaps they'd be able to talk with him, get some idea how he was feeling and so on.
She sent them to spy on me.
Hamlet, I know this is really an important issue for you, and maybe for now, if we could just hear from Gertrude, and if you need some paper, I could give you a chance to write some notes.
No, it's okay.
All right, okay. Gertrude, maybe you could continue.
Well, Polonius told us that he'd seen Hamlet acting very strangely, talking to himself on and on, soliloquy after soliloquy. And what was it? He heard him saying, "to be or not to be." I mean, of course we didn't understand what that meant. I mean, what is that? That just sounds so morbid. Then Claudius told me that he saw Ophelia and Hamlet together, and Hamlet was treating Ophelia just horribly. I mean, calling her all kinds of names, and he told her to get herself to a nunnery or something like that. I mean, of course it devastated the poor girl. And Claudius, he was completely reasonable through all of this. I mean, he thinks Hamlet's just depressed. And the two of us, we've been talking, and we think that maybe the best thing is if Hamlet just goes back to England.
Of course I'm upset. I mean, my father was just murdered.
Hamlet?
I'm sorry.
Gertrude, would you continue, please?
Well, I think maybe the worst part was this awful play he put on. I mean, at first, when he told us about it, it sounded like it might actually be a good thing for him. After all, we've always thought he needed a nice hobby, and he's always liked the theater. But this was not nice. This was actually very horrible. First of all, there's these two characters, a king and queen, on the stage. And then this other character comes on, who's supposed to be the king's nephew. And, all right, this is really horrible. He starts pouring poison in the king character's ear. I mean, of course, Claudius was horrified. He was really upset. I mean, what was he going to think? His nephew is showing a play where the nephew's killing the king to steal the estate. He was really upset. He leapt up, he said, "Turn on the lights." And the whole time, Hamlet was thrilled. He was acting like this was the greatest thing that had ever happened, and he's taunting Claudius as he leaves the room. After that, it's never really been the same. I mean, now Hamlet wants to bring this insane lawsuit against his stepfather. And I mean, I understand that mental illness is very, very difficult, but I just want to get our family back together. But it seems as though he can't move on. I keep telling him, "Do not forever with thy veiled lids seek for thy father in the dust. Thou know'st 'tis common. All that lives must die, passing through nature to eternity. Why seems it so particular with thee?"
So you're worried because Hamlet's taken such a long time to get over his grief?
Yes, exactly.
Well, perhaps I can just summarize what you're saying here so I can make sure that I'm understanding everything. You mentioned that after your husband died, Claudius was an important source of comfort and support for you, and that was the reason that you decided to marry him. And then you invited Hamlet back to stay with you, but then you became concerned about your son when you started to hear some reports that he wasn't acting quite the same as normal. Okay, you were also concerned he wasn't acting in a respectful way to your husband, and you really didn't like that part. And then at a play that Hamlet arranged, the characters acted out what seemed to be a murder of a king, and this upset your husband a great deal. Okay, so you're concerned about your son's health, and you want to settle some of the conflict here so that you can become a stronger family. Would that be about right there?
Yes, I think so. That's it.
Okay, so Hamlet, now maybe you could talk about your perspective on things.
Well, first thing I want to say is I don't even want to be here today. I mean, this is all her idea. I mean, she keeps saying she doesn't understand this, but I think it's pretty simple, you know? She goes and marries a man who killed my father.
You have no proof of that.
Gertrude, we asked Hamlet to wait. Could you let him speak for a bit? The other thing is we're not going to be looking at evidence or proof of things here. This isn't a court or any hearing. So what we're most interested in hearing about is just what happened. Hamlet, would you continue, please?
Well, ever since my father died, everything just seemed wrong, you know? I mean, she goes out and marries Claudius, and all I could think is, but 2 months dead, you know? Frailty by name is woman, you know what I mean?
So you thought that was pretty soon after your father's death?
I didn't know what to think, you know? Yet Claudius keeps teasing me about, you know, my grief being unmanly. After everything had happened, the last thing I wanted to do was be at Elsinore at the castle, but my mom basically begged me to come back and stay with them. And now she keeps telling me that she doesn't understand what's going on. But then I saw the ghost, you know, and I knew I had to find out the truth.
So what truths were you looking for?
Well, what the ghost told me. Horatio, he's a buddy of mine. He told me about seeing my father's ghost, and so I went up and saw it one night, and first it was pretty weird. I mean, you know, I thought angels and ministers of grace defend us. And then I realized it was my dad. He told me to revenge his most foul and unnatural murder. And I didn't know what to do at first. I mean, you know, he was always telling me to do stuff, like mow the lawn or whatever, but, you know, this was different. Then he said that he'd been murdered, and he told me that the serpent that did sting his life now wore his crown. And suddenly, all these strange feelings and thoughts I was having just made sense, you know? Like, I knew, but I didn't know what to do. I mean, I knew if I told everybody, they'd think I was crazy. Then I had this idea. I could act crazy, and then nobody would notice while I tried to find out what was going on. Then I heard about this play that was going on, some actors I knew, and I thought I could have them act out this play I know, but I could change the lines, and so it would be my father's murder. And then I could see how he reacted, and based on that, I'd know for sure. The play, everything happened exactly as I planned. The scene where the father is murdered, Claudius stood up, flipped out, ordered the lights put on. I mean, I'll take the ghost's word for £1,000, right? I mean, I knew now everyone would know. Everyone would believe me, but my mom, she didn't. Look, I realize this is kind of hard to understand. I mean, in retrospect, maybe the whole acting crazy thing wasn't such a great idea. I mean, everybody now thinks I'm crazy. It's just that I didn't know what to do. I just had all these conflicted feelings, you know? I mean, whether I should be, whether I should not to be. I mean, it's a big question. I had a lot of decisions to make. You know, I said some things, and I did some things, I kind of regret. Like what I said to Ophelia about getting her to a nunnery. I mean, I didn't mean that. I mean, it's just she didn't understand what I was going through. I mean, she kept wanting to talk about our relationship. You know, I mean, my father's ghost had just told me to go revenge his murder. I mean, I had a lot on my mind, you know? I guess the whole thing is I brought this civil action because as rotten as everything is in Denmark, I still believe in the justice system, you know? I just think this is a better way of going about things than just killing Claudius.
So, just so I'm understanding everything correctly, Hamlet, you say that after your father died, you were quite upset and unsure about what to do. And then when your mother married Claudius, you were concerned about the fact that not much time had passed before she got married again. You were already feeling confused. And then you saw what appeared to be your father's ghost. Is that right? And this representation of your father...
It was a ghost.
See, he's not well.
This representation of ghost spoke to you and told you some things about how your father died that made you very concerned about what's now happening with your mother and her new relationship. You weren't sure about how to bring up the concerns until you had some more information. You didn't want to appear unreasonable in making those accusations, so you pretended to act a bit strange. And that was because you thought then no one would know that you were investigating, right? Yeah. And now you're concerned that people have misunderstood this, and they think you're actually not well, such as your mother here, right? And you think that the staged play that you showed on and your stepfather's reaction to that
He's not my stepfather.
What would you prefer that I call him?
A murderer?
Oh, that's ridiculous. He is the king. He is your stepfather. I mean, how can you say things like this?
Let's just call him Claudius. So now that we've heard from both of you, maybe we could start the next phase of the discussion. There's several things that came up that I'd like to know some more about. Hamlet, you said that the way that Claudius reacted affirmed that how you felt about it as being involved with your father's death?
Involved is a nice way of putting it.
So, yet when you attempted to tell your mother about this, you thought she really didn't understand what you were saying.
She understood me fine, she just didn't want to admit the truth.
So trust is an issue for you.
Well, exactly, I'm her son. You know, she keeps choosing to believe Claudius instead of me.
What do you think she's feeling right now?
I think she's confused. I mean, I think she's having a tough time admitting that she rushed into this marriage.
What would make it easier for you to understand why she got married so soon after your father died?
I don't know, I mean, some explanation. I don't know why she had to get married so fast.
Hamlet, you have to understand this was a very difficult time for me. I was grieving, and Claudius was there for me. He was there to support me. He seemed to be feeling the same kinds of things.
So this time was really hard for you.
Yes.
So I had the sense that while you were both obviously very upset and affected by King Hamlet's death, you lost a husband, Gertrude, and you lost a father, Hamlet. You both seem to have dealt with it differently, and I think you expressed that grief in very different ways.
Absolutely. He was my husband. I loved him.
It didn't take her long to get over it. I mean, God knows what she's going to do if I ever get killed. She'll be at the adoption agency before the funeral.
Hamlet, what do you think your mother was feeling at that point?
I think she was just weak, that's all.
What examples can you think of where she might not have understood some of the things that you've done?
I know it sounds strange, but you know that stuff I said about Ophelia?
You mean get thee to a nunnery?
Yeah, that.
See, how can he say that? She's a lovely girl. She's bright. She's beautiful. She comes from a good family.
So Gertrude, at that point, you just really didn't understand what was going on. And Hamlet, you said that you were acting crazy, but that you weren't crazy?
Well, I just figured if I started talking about a ghost, I mean, everyone would think I was crazy.
So you thought by acting crazy that no one would think you were just crazy for seeing a ghost?
Yeah. I mean, I realize now maybe it wasn't the greatest plan.
It sounds like finding out the truth is really the most important thing for you.
Well, yeah. I mean, if the ghost of your father goes and tells you to do something, I mean, you do it, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I haven't actually had that experience, but I can see how you might feel that way.
I mean, I couldn't just go to the police. You know how hard it is to try to charge a king with murder?
So that was really difficult for you. It sounds like a very confusing situation to be in. From your perspective, Gertrude, do you see what Hamlet's talking about a little bit more?
Well, maybe a bit. But I'm still worried about him. I still want to be sure he gets help.
You really care about your son, Hamlet.
I do.
So it sounds like you're both agreeing that you may have misunderstood each other's actions. Hamlet, you considered that your mother's marriage was a form of betrayal, when to her it was an important source of comfort and support. And Gertrude, you may have misunderstood how Hamlet was behaving when he was behaving in unusual ways. And you were only acting crazy, just so that you could get some more information about your father's death. So, and all of this has been very upsetting for both of you. I think it's really great that we're getting some common ground here and some further understanding. There's still some major issues that I'd like to talk about. And what I'd like to do right now is put those up on the whiteboard there so that we can talk some more about those. Okay. Right here is what I'm seeing as the issues. Okay, now number one, I think, is the marriage and timing. Does that work for you, the timing of the marriage? And the second one is the acting crazy, and the trust that we've had problems with as a result of that. And I think the third thing is the ghost, all right? And the allegations that you're making about Claudius. So, is there anything else that you think that I'm missing here? Okay. So, before we start to talk about some of these issues here, maybe it would be a good time to caucus right now. Gertrude, if it's okay with you, I'd like to start with Hamlet first. If you could just wait outside for a few minutes, I'll come and get you when we're finished. Okay? Thanks.